So hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our Wednesday call. And I was saying earlier, this is when my ADD is like totally going to start to come out because I'm super excited about this one. And it's new to me. So my thoughts are a little bit, oh, Janice, yes, you have joined a few times. So, oh, and you study with Kathleen. Oh, nice. Second eye surgery, so not good with showing my face. No worries at all. Just happy you're here. Yeah, and you don't ever have to go on camera if you don't want. There's no pressure here at all. So I am really excited to share with you some thoughts I had. And I've actually had these thoughts for probably going on 3 years now. So when Justin came, and I've talked in detail with this about Nicholas too. When Justin came and was talking about how Mrs. Takata used Reiki with animals and how was it Tomito also used Reiki with animals. We don't know if Usui did. It's really curious, but they're still using, I don't know so much about Tomito, but Mrs. Takata was still using a very human approach with animals, but she still got results. So what I'm going to share with you right now, oh, Janice, I'm glad you enjoyed last week. Yeah, last week was amazing with Justin. What I'm going to share with you is obviously speculation, right? We don't know for sure, but I'm going to give you kind of some background on kind of why it supports my theory a little bit. But when I say, like Mrs. Takata used human Reiki with animals, right? Kathleen used human Reiki with animals. So back in 1998, when Kathleen was learning human Reiki, that's when her dog Dakota started to come and lie at her feet. And she was thinking, okay, wow, I guess he wants it too. So she was using her hands on Dakota. And if you look at her first book, there's a lot of not necessarily specific hand positions, but she's laying her hands on the animals. She talks about how she used to cross tie horses. She would leash dogs, keep animals in close quarters in rooms. And so not give them the lead and not give them choice. But one thing about Kathleen, and this is just because she's a very polite and decent person, and I'm not saying people who aren't decent, but she would always ask permission. So if you look in her first book that came out in 2004, I think, that talks about getting permission from the animals, right? Always asking for permission. And that's really important for us humans to ask permission, because a lot of times we don't even realize that we're imposing upon the animals, because we come with all this good intention, right? It's like, oh my gosh, I'm here to help you. And I have this great modality. And I'm going to actually talk about that too, because that opened up a whole another thing. But I want to go back to, so we're dealing with this from a very human aspect, right? So if you learn human Reiki, naturally, like Kathleen, you want to use the human Reiki with animals. But like Kathleen discovered in 2006, when she studied with Franz Stiene, and then after with Nicholas and with Yakutin Inamoto, that the more traditional way of meditating and going inward is more effective with animals. So we've been doing this. I mean, Kathleen's been doing this since 1998. I've been doing this since 2007. And one of the things I know for 100% sure is that when we go inward and when we let go, our energy goes outward, right? And when our energy goes outward, that's when things can actually happen with animals. So when we meditate, our energy becomes calm. If we're practicing the precepts, we're practicing our meditation without anger, without worry. We're humble, we're diligent in our practice, right? And we're compassionate. And we're sitting there in that beautiful space, and our energy starts to go out, and we can see how our energy affects animals without us doing anything. So if you go to care, and I always use care as an example because it's a great, fantastic example. And the same thing happened when Kelly and I went to Keepers of the Wild, that you can't touch wild animals. You can't go in with a tiger, especially one of the tigers had attacked somebody before we had gotten there. So there's just no way you can go in with tigers. So how can you offer a peaceful setting without touching them? Well, you have to go inward and allow your energy to be calm. And when your energy becomes calm, it becomes attractive to them, because There isn't that desire. Like when we decide we want something, right, our energy starts to go up, or we worry, oh my gosh, is this working? Is this happening? Then our energy gets kind of in. Or if we're angry about, like, for, one of the tigers that had attacked somebody, he was put in a really bad position and he attacked because he was in a bad position. And so you feel really maybe angry for the tiger that happened for him because it really traumatized him. You might, but when we're in this space through the Let Animals Lead method, right, we have all these tools. When we go into that place of just complete surrender, complete humility, an ego-free place, that is when animals choose to connect with us. So if we know this and we've experienced it, so if you've ever been out to care, you know firsthand that when you're sitting with the animals, that everything goes quiet. So it's not at first, like in the first half a day, it's not, because everybody's still really excited, right? Everybody's still like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. And I want to do, Reiki with an alligator or Reiki with the monkeys or whatever that is. So the energy is a little bit like this. But we do some exercise to kind of bring that energy down. And by the afternoon, the animals are just open. But the animals are open at care. It's almost like an unfair.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, sorry. I'm going to put you on.
Hello?
Judy, you are on. There we go. So anyway, so at care, we've gone there since 2011, every single year, except for, I think, 2021. So they're used to us. They're used to, oh, they're here. They start to feel that energy. Boom, they're open, because they know their job is to support the students so they have a fantastic experience, and they always do. But, if I take Keepers of the Wild, they didn't know us at all, right? These are animals that are completely foreign to us, never met them. And the experiences that we had with them when we meditated were like the coyotes paced constantly 24/7. They just never slowed down. And while we were there, the coyotes started to slow down. And then by the second day, they were laying down in, like, digging like little holes and just laying down and resting. And the managers were saying, because we taught the staff and the managers and the vet were saying that never happens. These coyotes never slow down. They're always pacing when humans are around. Maybe they slow down when they're by themselves at night, but during the day, when humans are around, they're always pacing. So when we're there and we're sharing this space and we're teaching the staff how to share the space, and the animals start to go calm, you start to realize, wow, this is really powerful. So I've thought this for a few years, like I've said, like, well, we're nothing like Usui, right? We never practiced Buddhism. We never really practiced meditation in our lives, right? It's not something we're taught. It's not something that's in our culture. But for Usui, that was in his culture. It was very much in his culture to meditate, to be calm, right? And you can imagine, here's a man who's very connected to Buddhism, to meditation, to himself. And he goes up on this very mystical mountain. So you heard from Justin last week how mystical and magical Mount Kurama is. And in fact, I should have pulled that from the level 2 manual. There's a picture of Kathleen standing at the temple on Mount Kurama. And there's a circle, like a vortex. And they say that for 12 hours of the day, the earth rotates, or the energy rotates, clockwise. And then for 12 hours, it rotates anti-clockwise or counterclockwise. So the mountain itself is very, very magical. And I think Justin shared about how there's this tree there that's supposed to be very magical. And supposedly Usui went and meditated under the tree. Well, when we look at this and we take all of these kind of pretty well-known facts, or at least some of them can be proven, like what Justin was saying last week, that yeah, we can prove some of these facts. Then we start to think, or at least I start to think, okay, well, that means that when Usui was up on the mountain and he was meditating, it was probably really, really powerful, right? Like way powerful, because of who he was. So I know from my own experience, when I meditate, like a care, even if I'm by myself and I'm meditating, because I'm pretty good at this now, I know the results I get, but I'm nowhere near what Usui would have been. And remember, he meditated for 21 days. So let's say the first day even the first couple days, maybe say, he wasn't doing that well. But by the time the end of the 21 days, I mean, it would have been like so much energy up there from meditation. And he's on a fast. So you're kind of going to a different kind of realm in that. I don't know if you've ever fasted for like 10 days. It's a crazy experience. I've only done it once in my life, and it was so horrible and painful because I love food and I would never do that again. But when you fast and you're doing something like meditation, you're going to somewhere else, but your energy is also really, really pure because you've cleaned out like all of these toxins in your body, and your energy is super pure. So we think about Usui going up on this mountaintop, meditating, and who is he surrounded by? He's surrounded by all kinds of animals. At that time, there were wild deer, wild boar. I think there were wolves up there. There would have been eagles. There would have been all kinds of different types of birds. There would have been snakes, bunnies, most importantly, deer. And there's a reason I say most importantly, because I'm going to read you a little bit something about Shinto. And so he goes up there on this magical mountain in nature, right, with all of these animals around him. Now, it doesn't take much for people like us, right? Those of us who believe in this method of let animals lead, to understand that Usui would not have been alone. He would have been surrounded by animals. Even animals that may have been natural enemies, they may have still surrounded him, because in that peace, if they're not hungry, if they're not hunting, they would have relaxed and deeply connected in that space with him. And if you've ever meditated outside and had birds come close to you, or even like bugs, or even anything come close, maybe the neighbor's animals or whatever that is, your energy is attracted. And up there on that mountain in nature, Usui's energy would have been extremely attractive. So Usui wasn't a Tendai priest. That's kind of a myth that has been debunked, especially because of where he's buried and his tombstone. So, but he would have been practicing the traditional Japanese religion of Shinto. But what's really interesting about Shinto is that Shinto has a belief system that there is a kami, or a kind of spiritual essence or presence in beings. So animals have kami, rivers, mountain trees have kami, and they have this beautiful essence and spirit that was considered sacred in Shinto, in the Shinto religion, and in Japan. Now, this is an ancient religion, Shinto. They think it's the original religion of Japan. But when Usui would have been practicing and creating Reiki, it would have been at a time when Japan was shifting towards a more Western outlook. So it would have been during a time where some of these traditional, ancient practices, like maybe kami, seeing the spiritual essence in animals, might not have been as revered or as important. It might even have been a situation where, kind of like for me with Reiki, right? I don't say animal Reiki, I say I do animal meditation. And the reason for that is I kind of want to steer away from Reiki because it has a lot of different meanings. People think it's hands-on, or they think you're forcing something. So a lot of times I stay away from the word Reiki. And I say meditation. And so it could have been too that when Usui, even if he had these mystical experiences with animals, and we can't say for sure if he did or if he didn't, we can't say either. We do know that he may have not really focused on it. And again, it might have even been because it was like, oh, wow, I had this great experience with animals. Oh my gosh. And now, but I can't talk about it because I'm coming down the mountain, and, I want to be seen more as Western. It might even be as simple as, because of the ancient Japanese belief, because they understand that animals have a spiritual essence, that nature has a spiritual essence, the animals coming around him may have been possibly even a common occurrence when people meditated up on Mount Kurama, right? And so it wouldn't have been like, oh, wow, this is a really cool thing to him, like it is to us, because it might have been something that he experienced many times, not just on Mount Kurama either, but just when he is out meditating. So when we're thinking about Usui and the origins of Reiki, we kind of almost have to go back a little bit further than Usui when we look at animals, because they were sacred in Japan at the time that he was creating this. Animals held a lot of meaning and symbolism in ancient Japan. So, like for instance, and I think I wrote it down here, deer were considered very special and very holy, right? Because they represented, and let me see here if I can find the deer part. So certain animals like deer and foxes were considered messengers of like a good forbearing. And I guess some were a bad forbearing too, but I want to find the deer, let's see. Oh, okay. So cranes would have been good fortune. So if you saw a crane, then that was a bearer of good fortune. And I think that the deer were messengers of good luck, but also they protected like rice and other things like that. Some of the animals were like represented good fortune or luck, protection, like the crane was luck. And so they all had kind of a different symbolism attributed to them, and the trees too. And I think that's why they were talking about the holy tree and or the spiritual tree on Mount Kurama. So in Shinto religion, animals, especially, you know, years and years ago, hundreds of years ago, they were very sacred and they were revered. But at the time that Usui was kind of creating his system and meditating and did his 21-day fast, he would have been maybe moving away from that and into a more Western way of being with his Reiki. Because when you look at his Reiki, you look at the precepts. These weren't something that were from the emperor's poems or anything. It's most likely from a book that was written by Dr. Oh my gosh, Bazan. His name was Dr. Is it Kabuki Bazan? And he wrote it in like 1916 or 17. And it was the poem that the precepts kind of match is called The Path to Soundness, which makes sense because if you look at the precepts, it is like a pathway to being a sound person. When you live without anger, you live without worry, you work diligently, you live without ego, and you live with compassion. So the Path to Soundness poem is almost the exact as the precept. So they're pretty sure that the precepts came from this 1916 or 17 book by Dr. Bazan. And you can look that up. I think there's a couple stories on the internet about that, and I'll try to put a link in the recap as well. So when we look at Usui, he's not necessarily trying to keep ancient ways in the modern way of Reiki. He's actually probably trying to make it more westernized so that anybody could learn it, because a lot of the people that he was teaching weren't meditators. They weren't Buddhists. They were just regular people. So he would have to be teaching them something that would be easy for them to learn. So exactly what we're doing today. We're teaching people a very simple way to get to where we are when we meditate with animals, right? And so we break it down into these little bite-sized pieces that help you then have a really incredible experience with animals. So looking at the Shinto religion and the presence of kami, or the belief of the presence of kami in animals, and the belief that animals were sacred, it really coincides with how we practice, right? That animals are teachers and healers. So that goes back to ancient Shintoism, that we have a belief that animals are sacred, right? We don't have a belief that animals are just things, or they're disposable, or, oh, they're just an animal, and then we're up here and they're down here. In fact, in the Let Animals Lead method, we believe that animals are much higher than us and that we strive to be like them. So when we look at the Let Animals Lead method of Animal Reiki, and we look at the very beginnings of Reiki and kind of take apart Usui's meditation on Mount Kurama, we start to see, oh, wow, like the way we are sharing space with animals was really the way Usui shared space, whether he meant to be sharing space with animals or not. But the chances are he did go up there on the mountain where it was very spiritual, and he knew there were animals, and meditating and just accepting that animals are going to be a part of that, because as part of his religion, animals were sacred. Now, whether he was going to share that with everyone, obviously he didn't. That was a different journey, right? But his own upbringing, he would have had this very deep belief that animals were sacred beings, and not necessarily that they were above, but that they were definitely sacred and needed to be revered, and especially certain animals like the deer. And at that time when he meditated, I did look this up, there would have been a lot of deer up on the mountain, a lot of wildlife actually, because it wasn't very populated like it is now, where they have tours up there. And so you're going to see a lot less wildlife. But back then, you would have seen a lot of wildlife. It would have been very primitive in a way. So for me, this is so fascinating. And I want all of you to unmute, and let's talk about this. I want to hear what you all have to say about this as well, because, this is just me kind of going, okay, this has been my thoughts for a really long time. And I know it's a little bit controversial because it's not really based on facts. It's just based on the things that we know to be true at that time. And like the belief about Shinto, that isn't something that I'm making up or that didn't exist. That is something that did exist. That is a truth that was happening, and you can look that up. And I encourage you to look it up too, because it will help you in your practice when you start to understand, wow, you're really connected to that original beginning of Reiki, way before hands had even started, right? Because don't forget, hand positions didn't necessarily start with Usui. Like, we do the chair treatment, and that did start with Usui. And then I think has been proven. I need to have Nicholas come back. Super excited. Just side note, I'm going to segue a little bit. Nicholas has got even more information about the symbols and mantras, and he's going to do a class on Reiju that's like going to be mind blowing. So we're thinking about doing another class on the symbols and mantras, but don't worry if you paid for the first one. There's going to be a lot of new information, so we can't give away for free, but we'll be charging a discounted rate for people who already joined. And then for those of you who haven't, you're going to get not only some of the old information, but you're going to get all brand new information. It's going to be incredible. But so, I've been talking to Nicholas about this, and there are things that we can say are true, right? That Shinto was an ancient Japanese religion. So he would have been practicing Shintoism. He wasn't a Tendai Buddhist. So he didn't go up there. And I don't know, the temple at the top of Mount Kurama may have been a Tendai Buddhist temple, but that didn't mean he had to be a Tendai Buddhist in order to go up there and meditate. And we do know that Mount Kurama was considered sacred. And we do know that there is a big tree and it was considered sacred. And people think that is where Usui got his enlightenment about Reiki. So we know these things to be true. But going back to Usui and the hand positions, the chair treatment, we know from Nicholas has said, yes, if that's true. We know that Mrs. Takata brought a lot of the hand positions in. Hayashi also brought hand positions in. Usui did not have the prescribed hand positions. So when you talk about, I do the traditional form of Reiki, you really are doing the traditional form of Reiki in the Let Animals Lead method. We're doing the chair treatment that Usui taught. So we only do Reiki on ourselves, or we do Reiki in a chair with someone else. And it's all just sitting in the chair right here, because Usui, they're all head hand positions, because Usui believed if you healed the head, the body would follow. So there is no mention of doing those with animals, right? Because that wasn't what he was talking about. It was all human focused. But it doesn't mean that animals didn't influence a lot of what he was doing, especially because he didn't use hands. He could sit, and this is why people started following him, right? He would sit, he would meditate with people, and people would feel healed. And so there was no touching or doing hand positions like this in order for people to feel or get healed. So again, our system goes back to those original roots. So I find it really fascinating. I would love for someone to unmute and just, and like, even if you have like a controversial thing, even if you're like, no, I don't believe that, Leah, and this is why, that's totally fine too. because when we have discussions, that's when we learn and grow. And I know for me, I mean, I love having someone say, well, I don't really believe that because of whatever, because yeah, like tell me why. Because I don't know. I don't know everything. Oh my God. I don't even want to know everything. Can you imagine if you knew everything? Your life would be so boring. You would not be learning anything. So that's why I love and thank you so much for being so open and patient with me as I share this, because I love sharing these new ideas and kind of what I'm thinking, because I'm growing in my practice and I want to help you grow as well. So does nobody want to talk about this? I mean, just unmute and come in and talk about the sacredness of animals and what might be on your mind. Nobody has anything to share with me. I find that hard to believe. You have to have, somebody's got to have something to say, because otherwise I'll just sit here and talk in circles. Nobody. Oh my God. I'm going to start calling on. Oh, I saw Monica joined. Monica, why don't you talk to me? And then I'm just going to start calling on people to unmute. I don't even know if Monica will. Oh, she's not unmuting, so maybe she can't. All right. Well, then I'll just go down the line with who I see first. Darlene, why don't you unmute? And maybe she won't either. I don't know. Maybe I'll go down the line. Nobody will unmute and want to talk to me. Oh my God, this is so funny. Come on, guys. Support me, please. Joan, would you talk to me? Okay, wait.
I'll go.
Okay.
Oh,
Judy. Yes. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So for me, I'm fairly new to all this.
Yeah.
Um, not to animals, but
Right.
to I'm actually finishing my second class with Kathleen
Yeah.
tomorrow. But anyhow, it's been a great journey. Um, the one thing I'm finding, and it's a little bit disheartening, is how we humans look at animals.
Yeah.
Like for the majority, at least, maybe it's just in my area, the East Coast of the United States, or maybe it's all over the place. But I know there's some cultures who do see the animals as sacred, but we don't typically see that where I'm at. And I do a lot of work with uh, Western horse events
Mhm.
where there's competition and they use steer and it's but anyhow, yeah, they're commodities, period. So yeah, I wish the rest of the world would get more sensitive to the wisdom that animals have, and be more in tune to it, but I don't see it, and I don't, maybe we can create a tidal wave, I don't know.
Of course. So, Judy, I'm so glad you brought this up. See, this is what I love this. Thank you so much for talking.
Yeah.
Okay. And Monica said she can. So, no problem, Monica. So here is the great thing. I'm so glad you brought this up because we can all get really overwhelmed by this, right? In fact, I was just watching a video of a little girl, and I don't like rodeos because of what you just said. Like, right, they're using the horses as a commodity, they're using the calves as a commodity when they're doing roping. But this little girl was doing barrel riding. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old. And this little girl was on a horse that was spirited. It was, her dad had to hold it down and she just went around these barrels. And I was like, oh my God. And you could tell the horse was athletic, and who knows how they think of this. I do know rodeo people, they do love their horses, but not in the same way we do. But Judy, here's the good news. And this is really good news. Look at how far we've come. When we look back where we were 100 years ago, oh my God, where we were in the 70s, where we were in the 80s. I mean, people are still keeping their animals outside in the snow, in bad weather, tied up sometimes, chained up,
Chains.
right?
Yeah, for
And we
sure.
have come so far from that. Even in the rodeos, they treat the animals a lot better. I think racehorsing, they do treat the animals better, but they still have a long ways to go. So for us as kind of animal ambassadors and people who really truly see the beauty in the animals and really truly want a better life for them, then our best thing that we can do is be in our practice and send love and send love and send love and send love, because change will happen, and change only happens when there's love
Mhm.
behind it. And like if you look back in the 70s, And you look back, I'm watching, oh my God, I love this show so much. I'm watching The Wonder Years. I'm rewatching that series. Oh my God, I love that show. It makes me feel so good in my heart. It is such a wholesome, it's just a wholesome show. But when you look at the 70s and how, you know, crazy they were, not as crazy as they are now, but they were pretty freaking crazy for the times, for what that time was. And there was a lot of discontent in the world. But what were there? There was also hippies. There was also the energy of love going everywhere. And a lot of people who believe in the energy of love talk about how the Cuban, you know, Missile Crisis didn't happen because of the energy of love. Like a lot of things didn't happen because there was love happening as well, right? The Vietnam War ended. There's things that happen because of that energy of love. And you may not want to go out and protest. And, you know, and I think a lot of times the protests now are angry. I think they're kind of missing that element of love because back in the 70s, I mean, it was all about peace, love, and happiness, right? That was a theme. And they were trying so hard to overcome the negativity with love. Now, we don't really have that kind of movement right now, but we need it. So, in like our Reiki shares and in our classes, and just when we go out and we're with animals, you have to understand the power of the connection you have with animals first, right? So, for instance, and I've talked about this before, when Kelly and I went to Keepers of the Wild, and it was the first time we'd ever been there, right? So the animals didn't know us. So the night before we meditated and said, you know, we're coming and we can't wait to be with you. And then when we were there, like even before class started, we had this incredible experience with Bodhi, the tiger that had attacked somebody that was really traumatized. And he completely relaxed and even went to sleep. And one of the caregivers said, I've never seen Bodhi go to sleep during the day, like never. And he'd been there for years. So there is a power in what we're doing. But it's not just us sharing that with them. It's actually like this. So once we connect, we put our energy out, right, to connect, and then the animals and nature connects with it. That energy expands and goes further and further and further and further out. So like at Care, I talk a lot about how, you know, the property will get quiet, even the neighbors get quiet. It's pretty profound. The wild birds get quiet. It gets really, really quiet at Care, which she has farm animals and monkeys. And, you know, there's a lot of noise happening. And she lives in kind of a neighborhood. Like there's houses that are fairly close. And then the houses that, you know, surround her next to them, it's all ranch style houses on small, just regular neighborhood properties. So there's a lot of action. There's a busy road that's at the front of her property. And so when we experience that peace, that quiet, you start to understand the power of what you're doing and how far it can go out. So if you, Judy, can stay focused on the energy of love, the energy of peace, the energy of compassion, right? Because some people don't know any better. They can't know any better. We can't be mean to people who honestly don't know better. And some people do know better, but if you're raised a certain way and you don't know how to treat animals and you don't even understand like the beauty of what animals bring, it's very hard for you to then be like, oh, okay, I understand what people are trying to say, or oh, I understand the gift that animals bring. We have to be really compassionate. And the more compassion we share, the bigger the change can be. And I think about myself when I first went to Brighthaven for my level 1 class. And at the time, there was a dog named Patty. She was a German Shepherd, and she had been in a hoarder situation, and she was deathly afraid of cats. Well, she declined and she couldn't move and she had heavy breathing. And when I got there for that weekend, they kind of expected her to pass away. And 3 cats would take turns, because at that time, I think there were 19 cats at Brighthaven. 3 different cats would take turns and just watch vigil over Patty. And Patty came to really love the presence of the animals. And in fact, she was supposed to pass away that weekend. I think she lived for almost 3 months later. It was crazy how much longer she lived. But I think also it was crazy that she lived so long because she was in that energy of feeling really good with being loved. But my point is that when I get there, Patty is panting. she is like not doing well at all. They have to hand feed her. They have to give her water with a feeder. Okay. So me in my own ignorance, and I totally embrace this because it's where I was at that time. I was thinking, oh my God, they should put her down. They should put her down. And I have friends now that deeply love their animals and they see an animal in a wheelchair or something, they go, oh, they really should put that dog down or that cat down or whatever that is. And in fact, I saw a video. I don't know if you all have seen it. It's so heartwarming. If I can find it, I'll post it. And let me put a little note to myself. But it's this disabled lamb, and it can't walk. It has zero movement in its entire body, but its nose, it can push things. So they had like one of those toddler toys that where it lights up and it plays music. And they noticed that she kept pushing these different buttons to play music. And so they were like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Well, they ended up making her this cart that she lays on, and it has a joystick. And she pushes the joystick to go front and backwards and all this. And she goes all along the property. But there are people that would see her and think, oh, wow, she should be put down. That's awful. She shouldn't, have that. I mean, they're wasting their time and their money, right? So it's really a perspective and where you are at that point in your life, which is why it's so important for us to have compassion for those people. Because what if Kathleen, when I took her class, and I, voiced like, oh, I feel really uncomfortable because, I feel like I would have put her down. And instead of judgment, Gail and Kathleen are like, yeah, that's completely understandable. But, you can feel her spirit and just like talking it through and going, oh yeah, you're right. And I saw so much deeper, and I had the most beautiful meditation with her during class on the last day towards the end, because I would really opened up my heart and my mind to a different possibility. So it wasn't like I'm a mean person saying she should have been put down. It wasn't like I hated animals. It was where I was at my life. I didn't know any better. I didn't know about hospice for animals. I didn't know that an animal could, live a long time in that kind of a state and be happy. But now I know different, right? Especially because I just went through that experience with my pit bull, Shrek. He was almost 18 and really severely arthritic, and probably years ago, like 15, well, longer than that, it would have to be like 20 years ago, I probably would have put him down way before I did, just because of ignorance. So thank you so much, Judy, for bringing up this topic, because we have to remember that in order to change, we have to be compassionate, and we have to think about Usui, right? Can you imagine how hard it would have been for him to come off the mountain and talk about what he was doing? It wasn't like it was necessarily science backed or backed by anybody. He's just sharing something that he discovered. And so I'm sure that he came up against some kind of resistance, but look where we are now with Reiki. And Reiki kind of went through a phase too, where it was kind of like, no, that's kind of crazy. But now it's making a resurgence and people are starting to understand the power of it. It's really about education and about compassion. So, for all of us that are sitting here listening to this and here on the call, just remember that it's really easy for us to judge and say, oh, well, they should do better, but they may not know how to do better. So by us just sharing love, it opens them up. People start to feel that freedom and that support to make better decisions. I know that there are Reiki classes out there that teach beaming, teach hands-on, they corner the animals. I've seen videos and it's very uncomfortable. But then also at the same time, I always bless those people. I'm grateful that they're doing Animal Reiki. And Kathleen and I have talked about this many times. It's like, yeah, they may not be doing it the way we do it, and they may be forcing animals, but at least they're showing that there's a way to be with animals and help them. And a lot of times, a lot of these people end up coming and taking classes from us. So you come to a realization kind of sometimes on a natural path, especially if you're supported and you feel compassion. So I want to thank you. And then I'm just going to look at these. Alice says, we can learn from Native peoples who's respect and understand animals, exactly like the Native Americans here in America how, they revered animals. And even though they ate meat and they had to kill animals and they used their pelts, they always honored every aspect of the animals and they saw them as supreme beings. And they didn't, I mean, look at the way they rode their horses. No bits, right? They didn't beat their horses. They didn't whip their horses to go fast. I mean, those horses had to know how to get in and out of things. They were in a lot of wars together. So it's really amazing when you step back and you think, wow, you don't have to use force. And it's a good lesson for us too, right? It kind of piggybacks on what Judy was pointing out. We don't have to use force to get people to think the way we do. We have to do gentle and acceptance. So like the Native Americans, they weren't beating their horses like the Americans did, right? The Americans they come with chains, they come with whips, and they're beating the horses. And yeah, exactly. FD said, or ED said, that it's partnership. Exactly. It's partnership. That you're working in conjunction with an animal or even with another person. Don't forget, you guys, we have to have this same kind of compassion with people. And it's very hard. I know it's so freaking hard, but we have to have that compassion with people as well. Like we have to kind of treat them as feral animals. Like I used to treat my ex partner, Michael, as if he was an injured pit bull. He'd freak out about things. And it's kind of like, okay, well, he's just an injured pit bull. And it helped me because it helped me to be way more compassionate. Because if you look at somebody and they're mad at you and you're right and they're not, you can get a little bit upset. But if you have compassion and you come at them with love, they turn around on their own. And that happened to me a lot because Michael was from the South and he believed that women had a place, and I'm from California and I believe that women's place was above men. So we kind of had a different opinions about things. So there were times when we were like this, but when I went like this, when I was just open and just let him do his thing and didn't have any anger or worry and just saw him with compassion, he would turn things around so quickly. He would come around and say, you know what, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't. And talk about somebody who didn't know better with animals. I mean, being with me for 10 years, a lot of what he thought and felt about animals changed. And, he's always going to be a carnivore, but he tried really hard. I remember one time we had egg salad sandwiches and he said, oh, look, we're being vegan. And I'm like, no, you're not vegan yet. And then he was eating a ham sandwich. And okay, sorry, Janice. He was eating a ham sandwich and he goes, oh, look, I'm vegetarian. So, there's those things. But Janice, yeah, go ahead. And wait, I have one more comment to read. And this is from, sorry, I don't have my glasses on and I need to put them on really fast. Okay, so it's FD. Okay, so oh my gosh, Janice, your pic looks like my soul dog who must be connecting. Oh my gosh, I've had experiences to the contrary. I'm so glad to be here. I align deeply. Partnership. Yes, definitely. Yes, Janice, so sorry. I didn't realize you were trying to speak.
Okay, I'm going to try to get my camera going.
Yeah,
I
you don't have to.
joined the past few times, but
Please,
yeah, I've had three
thank you.
surgeries in the past 2 weeks,
No worries. You don't have to go on if you don't want to.
and two of them were eye surgeries. Anyway, this might not be well received, but what I was thinking um, is that a lot of this conversation has seemed very anthropocentric and white, and coming from and again, I'm fairly new here. I've only been in the last few conversations and I enjoyed last week and the few before that. But there are a whole lot of us who have always thought of animals as being better than humans.
Yeah.
And that's never been, I don't know. It just seems like that piece of the conversation has not been here in this particular Zoom, but
Yeah, in this particular Zoom, when I say, well, first of all, it's the Shelter Animal Reiki Association, and we practice a certain way, right? So when I talk about us and how we practice, that's what I'm talking about. But always in my emails, and I apologize if it didn't come across in this, we accept everyone, wherever you are, whether you practice the way we do or whether you don't. It's for all animal lovers, and we say that repeatedly in our emails when we invite people to these calls. It's for all animal lovers. What these calls, the kind of point of the calls, and I just saw it in the chat too. It was by Sharon. She said, these weekly meetings are so important for my own education and growth with animals and people. So thank you. So it's really to kind of help us see a different way. So I am the co-founder of the Shelter Animal Reiki Association. We practice Animal Reiki a certain way. We have found that it works really well, but that doesn't mean that you have to study with us. Doesn't mean that you have to take classes with us. That's why we share all this information for free, so that you can get information and maybe you learn and grow and maybe you don't. And then that's why we open it up for conversation as well, because and I'll stop talking so you can talk, because we appreciate that feedback. And yeah, you're right, it probably comes across as kind of like white, because that's probably my perspective a little bit. I mean, not totally, but
Well, and I'm really grateful because I started out, I was a college professor for 2 decades, and then my heart dog died.
oh, I'm so
And
sorry.
then a week later, I was in a companion animal end of life doula program through University of Vermont. There, I got referred to Kathleen, and I've taken the first 2 courses with her. It's a
Yeah.
really good fit. It just I think that native perspective is really, really important because uh, it doesn't seem to get a lot of traction in some circles. And again, I'm new, so I'm not
And I
judging.
mean, and so you have to understand, we didn't study Native American studies. We
Right,
haven't studied shamanism or other things. We're coming from the Japanese perspective, a
right.
different culture that is honoring animals, right? Which is why I had today's call about like the origins of it, how really it started with the respect and honoring of animals and seeing animals as a higher being, right? So I totally get what you're saying. And I love that, because you are absolutely right. The Native American aspect is really important. And especially for us that live in America, I mean, it doesn't get enough play. It doesn't get enough honor. And this is a beautiful thing, Janice, knowing what you know and taking these teachings, right? So when you take one of our classes, or you study, or you even come to these calls, again, you don't have to take these classes, and it starts to open up your heart and your mind, you can start going, wow, maybe I should take a class on shamanism. Maybe I should study, something different. It's to really just help you find your path and your way with animals, so that you find your voice, so that you too can share about this, right?
And it's one of the things that I really appreciated about last week's presentation, um, when they were talking about the connections with animals, and that is kind of your point. That's pretty much where it started. It's just that when you were asking for comments and no one wanted to speak, I thought, does anyone really want to hear what I have to say? And again,
No.
I've been hiding because yeah, 3 surgeries is not cool.
Yeah.
And but at least I can see you now, which is a really good thing. Anyway, I just wanted to add that, and
No, I'm glad you did.
thank you for everything
Yeah.
you're doing and everything that's going on, and I'm learning a lot from this. So thank you.
Good. Oh, see, that's exactly what we did. So again, Janice, I'm so glad you did speak, because I can guarantee you, if you're thinking it, someone else is thinking it, whether they're on the call thinking it or they're watching it later and thinking it. So I am so grateful to you for speaking up. And I always encourage everybody, it doesn't matter if you disagree with me. I'm not going to say, well, that's wrong, and cut you off. I'm open, because I have to learn and grow. We have to get better at the Shelter Animal Reiki Association, right? And I think that maybe having a speaker come and talk to us about how Native Americans, the kind of the history, and how what we can do now in our little piece to help continue that kind of honoring of animals. And so I'm always looking for speakers. So Janice, if you even know of anybody who might be able to just kind of share that perspective, please let me know, and I will reach out to them to get them on
Well,
our
and
session.
it's one of the things that I did regularly in over 20 years of teaching in higher ed. And it was mainly on human behavior stuff, but it always tied in with animals and sustainability. And it always resonated with people, and that was really rewarding. So I'll keep that in mind. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you again for speaking up. I truly appreciate it from my heart. And I'm so glad you're here. And I hope that I will see you on more of these. And so Joan says she works doing Reiki with women at rehab houses locally. And it's so important for me to meet them where they are. Yes, not to show up as I am there to fix them. Oh my gosh, Joan, I love that so much, because it's just like, I don't know if you want to unmute her or not, but it's just like with animals, right? We have to come in and meet them where they are and not where we think they should be, right? And that's really hard. And I don't know, Joan, if you were,
Yeah, I'm here.
you are.
Can you hear me?
Joan. Hey.
Hi.
So did you want to comment on that?
Oh, well, yeah, it's just it's like walking into someone's house. You don't automatically put your feet up on the table, or assume that, I'm their guest. I'm a guest, and I just love that they accept me, into their space, because their space, they know every inch of their space. It's not just some muddy pasture that's like, it's their home, you know. And then when I do Reiki with the women, I'm about to leave to go up to do Reiki with some women in a rehab in Novato, and their world is upside down. They so it no matter what who is the recipient of Reiki, I honor them as the people who or and animals same, who aren't flawed creatures. They're just they if they're accepting of my presence, which is a caring presence, it's not a judging presence, then chances are the space can open up more naturally for healing, because I'm not the be all end all. I'm just the meditating presence that has good intentions for all.
And that's really powerful. And they can feel that power. They can feel that lack of judgment and just that support. And how powerful is that? I mean, we know it with animals and even humans. Maybe they may not be able to verbalize it or say, yeah, I feel it, or show it, but they do feel it, especially when you're going in there. I think that's so beautiful, Joan. It was so funny when you first started talking. I thought you were talking about the rehab place, and you said, and it's muddy. And I was like, oh, what kind of rehab? And then you went horse. I was like, oh yeah. Okay.
Well, I meant the animal and the people. It's even though the method is different.
Because the horses, we like at Remus, when there's huge herds of horses, it's really funny. You realize, you learn very quickly, you're walking into their home, and you have to respect like the kind of hierarchy, right? Like where you place yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Warms my heart.
Yay, mine too. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And then FD said, we've been conditioned in Western culture, which doesn't see animals as above humans. So we need compassion and perspective. I have naturally felt and believed the same native way, but I always felt different because of my respect and deep honor for animals. Oh my gosh, FD, I'm so glad you said that, because a lot of times we do feel like the oddball because we do honor animals. And that's why we have this group, right? So we can all be oddballs together and know that there is a better way. It's just that a lot of people don't see that better way. And then Joan had said the same being true when I do Reiki. Oh yeah, animals at the local shelter, it's their home, and I'm the guest who isn't there to fix them, but to be a caring presence, offering a calming meditation. And then FD said calming meditation with love, and FD said, absolutely. So thank you so much for being here with me and for allowing me to share this with all of you, because I was super excited. I mean, I have kind of this been in the back of my head for a very long time about the connection, the deep connection, the respect that we have for animals in these classes, and how that respect actually goes back to the roots of the beginning of Reiki and even beyond. So when we connect to that energy within us, we're actually, remember, there is no time or space to energy. We're actually connecting to that ancient energy of universal energy, right? Mount Kurama, but also the Native American energy that's here. All cultures that honor animals goes back thousands of years, right? And we are a part of that. So if you think about that, you don't feel necessarily as alone, and you understand there have been a lot of progressions. There have been a lot of regressions. We have to admit that too. But there have been a lot of progressions with animals. So focus on the good. Focus on when you are with animals and what that brings to your heart. And then just make that conscious intention to share that love and light outwards with as many as we'll accept it, right? So we always do, and I don't have time today to do this, do I? Oh no, it's 2 o'clock now. But if we can remember when we meditate, when we're breathing into our belly and we're igniting our own beautiful inner light, and on the out breath, we're pushing that light out and we're sharing that light. If we can remember that and stay focused on that, and that energy of love and that energy of just, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be connected with animals. That is what makes a change. That is what makes a difference. I promise you, I've been doing this long enough, years and years and years. It is always the same. Love, light, and laughter are the things that create connection. So as I leave you today, I just want to say thank you so much. I'm super excited. Nicholas is going to be back. He's going to talk to us again about symbols and mantras and Reiju. And yes, absolutely, Christine, I'm so glad you could come. And you know what, you guys, thank you so much for telling me how much you appreciate it, because I mean, I kind of know it's why I do it. If I get at least, I used to do it when there was only 4 people coming. I love doing this because I love what I do and I love sharing it. And we do this for free at the Shelter Animal Reiki Association. We are a nonprofit, but we do it for free because we want to empower people no matter where they are in life. And it's sometimes finances are an issue and you can't pay for a class. So we really hope that by coming to these Wednesday calls and by listening to the replays, that you get the education that you need to then, and the empowerment, right? Because there is empowerment in education to go out and support the animals that you love in a way that is actually in alignment with who you are at your heart. So thank you all so much. Next week, I'm going to talk about getting a no from an animal. We've talked about this many times before, but I'm going to look at it a slightly different when we talk about it, and I'll explain more in the recap email. But we're going to talk a little bit about why you might get a no, what a no might actually mean, and I'll share what happened at Namaste Stables. It wasn't a no, but there's a way that you can kind of go, oh, okay, wow, this animal may not be comfortable. And I know, Joan, if you can come back, I'm not sure you can, but I know you have a lot of stories about horses. Horses are the greatest teachers for showing you when you're too much, or maybe when you can be a little bit more. Horses are great teachers. So thank you all so much for being here, for taking time out of your day. I truly appreciate you. Thank you, Joan. So glad you could make it today. I know it's hard for you because you always have things going on. So it was a real pleasure to have you today. And all of you, thank you so much for being here with me. I so appreciate you. Mwah! And so hope to see you next week. Bye, everyone.